Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Metzia Bava Metzia daf Tzadi Hey. We're going to begin on Tzadi Hey with our fourth line from the top. So we were learning about the Arba Shomrim and the various responsibilities. Sometimes they have to pay, sometimes make a shvur, depending on who we're referring to. So now the Gemara says Geneva Vaveda, in which we know when it comes to the din of Hashem Achinam, so he would be able to be nishba and be potter. Hashem Esachar is chayiv to pay. So Geneva Aved B'Shoyel Menon. How do we know that if a borrower has an object lost or stolen from him, that he's obligated to pay? So we can learn out from his chiyah by shvur mesa. Ma shvur mesa dol efshul mitrach v'asuye. The reason maybe why you're only chiyah by shoyel is when it comes to if it broke or died, because you cannot retrieve its loss; it's destroyed. However, when it comes to something which is lost or stolen, you could go out of your way to try to find this object, and therefore, because of that, maybe they're not going to be chayav so fast. So how do we know when it comes to Geneva Aveda, the din is that you're going to be chayav by shoyel? Elokiha the pasuk says, "V'nishbor omes ainli el shvur mesa." I only know that the shul will be chayav in those cases. Geneva Aveda Benayin. How do we know also be chayav then if it was lost or stolen? So Amart Kavachaymer, because Mashem Sacher Shipatim Shvur Mesa chayav b'Geneva Aveda. So shoyel shechayav b'Shvur Mesa and din shechayav b'Geneva Aveda. So we have a beautiful Kavachaymer, Shemer Sacher, who is doing some service. He's watching the object. He's being paid, but the din is that he's not chayiv for oitzim, but he is chayiv for Geneva Aveda. So if we see by a Shemer Sacher that even so he's chayiv Geneva Aveda, so a borrower who's chayiv for more things, then certainly he's going to be chayiv Geneva Aveda. The zuhi kavachaymer shinel of tshuva, and this is in fact a great question in which there is no answer. There is no tshuva. So, and let's just immediately go to question TA21, which we're not complete yet, but it says, so ma ika lemifrach, madu ein zet tshuva kavachaymer. So let's continue. So my anal of tshuva. Maybe you could ask the following question. Yeah, Baal Shemer Sacher, who's chayav in Geneva Aveda, shechein mishalim tashlumi kefil b'toin tanis lis mezuyim. And you have, okay, so we know that they are chayav when it comes to a din of Geneva Aveda, but also if it's list mezuyim, which is really annoying, it's not because someone's pointing a gun at you, so they could make a shvua to be able to part to themselves. And if it turns out that they're lying, so the din is that they'll have to end up paying kefil, in which we never find the shul will ever have to pay kefil. He only has to pay karen. So if you'll karn to the shul adifa, this is what we said before. Having to pay karen without a shvua is more chomer than having to pay kefil with a shvua. And therefore, this is not a good kavachaymer. It's not a good pircha on the kavachaymer, and therefore, for that reason, it in fact is a valid kavachaymer. So again, if you want to ask this kasha, there's a chiyuv of having to pay kefil. No. Even though that's true, but we're dealing with a situation where you'd have to pay karen by a shoyel even without a shvua. That's worse. Alternatively, when we're talking about a case of list mezuyin, that is a case of a gazel. Let's look at Rashi. V'toin tanis list mezuyin. Well, Indian mifter b'tashlumin havi oinus. V'toin tanis ganev havi Indian kefil. Im nishbo ba edim shi etzloi. Let's say those witnesses that say, "Hey, how could you have made such a shvua?" So he'd have to pay kefil. A shul can never end up paying kefil. The chitayin v'yermer listim azuyim bo'alai, but not the machayev asasam karen. Even if a shul says it was at gunpoint, even though something was beyond his control, he's still chayev. So he said that's not a pircha. Alternatively, listim azuyim is a gazlan, says Rashi. But I feel nishma shemer sachar el zel sheker. Even if the shemer sachar would lie, v'nimsa shahay etzloi, lo mechayev kefel, shein kefel el begoynev. As we know that when it comes to geneva, is there a potential of kefel? However, the shemer sachar will never have to pay kefel, even if he's turning tanis gana by list of mezuyim, because list of mezuyim is considered like a gazlan, because you see who the person is, and he's pointing the gun right at you. He's basically grabbing it. It's not a geneva. It's not done in a private manner. So therefore, for that reason, you would only have to pay Karen, and you don't have to pay Karen anyway. So that's the reason. The second reason. Okay. Then again, that answers TA21. So Ashkan L'chiv Lifter Minolan. I can understand that when it comes to Gneva Aveda, a show will be chayiv in a situation where the Baal is not with him, which is how we introduce this parak. Lifter Minolan. How do we know if the Baal is with him and it gets lost or stolen, that also you'll be putter in that situation? Because we know by Shvura Mesa, if the Baal Imoy, and then the din is that you're potter. So by Shvura Mesa, you're going to be potter. So Gneva Aveda should also be potter if the owner is with you. Shvura Mesa Shecheinainis. However, when it comes to Shvura Mesa, it was a total einus. So how do we know Gneva Aveda? Maybe that's the only reason why we're lenient by Baal Imoy, that you're potter, is because it was really an einus. However, when it comes to Gneva Aveda, which is not an einus, so maybe even Baal Imoy you'd be chayiv. El Gomer Mishomer Sacher. We went out from Mishomer Sacher. So, wait 1 second. That, if we're going to learn from Mishomer Sacher, the Mishomer Sacher could from an Olin. How do we know from that? Gar Mechayuva the Mishomer Sacher, Mechayuva the Shoyel. We learn out the Chiyav of Mishomer Sacher from the Chiyav of Shoyel. Malu Holan Babalam Potter, Avkan Babalam Potter. So it's coming to tell you that just like over there, when it comes to a Shoyel, if the Baal is there, you're potter. So to over here, if the Baal is with the Shemer Sach, is also potter. So b'mai Gomar, Iba Mamatzinu. How do you compare the Shoyel to the Shemer Sachar? Equal Mifrach, Kida Parchin and Shachin Oinus. You can perhaps say that you can't learn out one from the other, because maybe again Baal Imoy is only by the case of the Shoyel. In the case of an Einus by Shvura Mesa. The fact that there's a Vav in the Pasuk that comes to link the two. And therefore, since it's connected, so therefore we say that when it comes to Baal Imo, you're potter in both cases. Yikati Shalom and Shemer Sachel Gomer. So you want to compare Shoyel, learn out Shemer from a Shemer Sachar. Understand? You can't compare it to you can't learn out from a Shemer Sachar, because the Shemer Sachar is more lenient. Because by Shvura Mesa, by Nainis is potter entirely. By Shol Yerchayev Shvura Mesa. So how do you know Baal Imoy if the man is with the owner is with the guy and it gets lost or stolen? How do you know? By the shol you be potter. So again, how do we know Gneva Aveda b'shoyel? The government Shemer Sachar. We went out from a Shemer Sachar. That what? When it comes to Shemer Sachar, in a situation, we say the Shemer Sachar is Chai b'Gneva Aveda, even though it's potter and Einus. So as we said, Kal v'Chayim, that certainly shol is going to be Chayiv. So that we already know. Now, Dayalam and Adin is Kanadin. So the thing is, we have to now, when it comes to a Kal v'Chayim, this didn't die, you can't learn out more than from the thing itself. And therefore, Magneva Aveda the Shemer Sachar. When it comes to Shemer Sachar, B'Balam Potter, Avneva Aveda the Shoyel, Nami B'Balam Potter. We have to say that whatever the din is by Shemer Sachar, if we're saying that you're Chayiv Gneva Aveda, so too we're learning also for by the Shoyel, you're going to be Chayiv Gneva Aveda. But it has to be that it's the same laws as when it comes to a Shemer Sachar. By a Shemer Sachar, he's only, if the Baal is there, he's potter. So too, when it comes to the Shoyel. So, how do we know the Shoyel is potter when the Baal is with him by Gneva Aveda? El Makra v'chi shal vav moisiv al inyan rishon v'yomad elin matachtain. Matachtim elyon, so you can learn back and forth and in both directions. Says Rashi, Geneva Aveda, the first one line. Geneva Aveda the Shemer Sacher Mechiyuv the Shoyel. We learn out that when it comes to it being lost or stolen by a Shemer Sacher, we learn out from the Chiyuv of a Shoyel. Mashvur Mesa the Shoyel B'Balam Potter. We learn out that by Shvur Mesa, even by a borrower, as long as the owner is there, your potter, so too, whenever Shemer Sacher is going to be chayiv, but in the case of the Baal is with him, he's going to be potter. And therefore, that's the reason why when it comes to Geneva Aveda, which by Shemer Sacher would normally be chayiv, but therefore, we're going to say if the Baal is there at the time of the Geneva Aveda by the Shemer Sacher, he'll be potter. But Tachtam Elyon, Shemer Sacher Chiyuv Geneva Aveda, Shalom B'Baalim Avshoyel Kain. A borrower is going to be chayiv if the Baal is not there. U'Mashem Masachim B'Baalim Potter Avshoyel Kain, Dein Meshivin Al Hekesh. And therefore, when it comes to Shemer Sacher, we establish that's only when the Baal is there. But if the Baal is not there, then you'll be potter. Okay. So that's how, one way or the other, that's how we end up learning out the din that a shoyel is going to be potter by Baal Imoy when it comes to Geneva Aveda as well. We're learning out from basically from a Shemer Sacher and the Vav, etc. Okay. Itmar, Pshia B'Bailim. So what happens if, says Rashi, Echem and Ashayrim, and one of these watchmen, Shepasha, he was negligent. The Sherm was negligent. Kashahayu Baalim b'malachto, but the Baal was with him. So it's not by Geneva Vaveda, but really those actual pshia. Now normally by pshia you're chayiv. However, what happens if the Baal was with him? So pligi b'Ravacha b'Ravina, chadam chayiv, chadam potter. It's a machlokas. And this is going to be question 12 as well as TB22. Mandir merchayiv. Why do we say, for example, if we're dealing with a Shemer Chinam, who's chayiv b'pshia? So why would we say that he's still chayiv even if the Baal is there? Even though we learn out this notion of Baal Imoy by the Shemer from the Shoyel, and then we compared it also to the Shemer Sacher to say that it's totally on when the Baal is there, but if the Baal is not there, then he's going to be potter. But that's only learning from one pasuk of a shoyel to a Shemer Sacher. But now you can't also make two jumps to a Shemer Chinam. The din is mikra nidr shalfanav v'lo lifnei fanav. And this drashas machlokas is in numerous places. Hilkach im Baal of imoy a Shemer Chinam l'ksiv. The whole notion of whether the Baal is with you to pater, it's not written over there. Ubshianami b'Shemer Sacher. Also, when it comes to Pshia by Shemer Sacher, V'shoyel Liksiv. Hilkach, V'Shemer Sacher, when it comes to Shemer Sacher, V'shoyel L'chiyav. So let's go slow. V'lo Lifnei Fanav, a Shemer Chinam, says Rashi. The Parshas Shel Shemer Chinam Shel Shemer Sacher, Lo Iskish B'Vav Yisera. There's no extra Vav. Okay. So therefore, it's like this. A Shemer Chinam Ksiva Be Pshia, I'll call the Repesha. When the son talks about a Shemer Chinam, the only time he's chayiv is I'll call the Repesha, if he's Paisheya. Okay, so let's continue with the Gemara, then we'll jump right back to the Rashi. Hilkach. B'Shemer Sacher V'Shoyel L'chiyav. Asi B'Kabel Chaymer. B'Shemer Chinam. We can learn out that there's a chiyav when there is no Baal there, and you're Paisheya. We're going to learn out from the Shemer Chinam that just like it says, I'll call the Repesha, you're going to be chayiv. So too, when it comes to Shemer Sacher as well as a shoyel, that if there is no Baal there, you're going to be chayiv. And it's a simple kabel chaymer, right? Asim b'kabel chaymer m'shemer chinam. That a Shemer Chinam is going to be chayiv b'pshia. Then certainly a Shemer Sacher and a shoyel should be chayiv b'pshia. Avu b'baalim liftor. However, if the Baal is there, when it comes to the Shemer Sachar, the shoyel will be potter. Af b'shem Sachar v'shoyel lo. When it comes to a shem Sachar and a shoyel, no. My timer, kiksiv im balav imoi liyishalom a shoyel v'shem Sachar. Right, it's only going on them. Ahanech chiyuvi deksibahu behedyahu demichtav. Only thing that's which is written explicitly, not referring to pshia. And therefore, basically, what we're saying is that when it comes to being a shemachinam who is poisheya, so the din is if the baal is there, you're still going to be chayiv. If you don't learn lifnai, if you say mikra nidrish lefanav v'lo fanav. Okay, let's hold off on that. Make sure I got this good. Actually, let's continue. Mandiamer potter ksaver mikra nidrish lefanav v'fnei fanav. V'chiksiv im balav imo shemachinam namiksiv. So therefore, he holds the whole din of shemachinam. Also, there's a din of Baal Imoy. So that's a whole machakas. Do we say Baal Imoy by the Shemer Chinam, or do we only learn it for the Shemer Sach and the Shoyel? Okay, let's look at question 12. Shiba Baal Im Potter. It's a machakas, one of the stadim. So plug to Rav Acha Ravina. V'tali Im Baal of Imo D'Ksiva B'Shoyel Nedrish Behekish Vaviat Moisev Af Al Parsha Shemer Chinam. Is it also by Shemachinam with Nefanav or Raka Shemer Sachar de Lefanav, which is basically what we said, which is the same as question TB22. What did I write? Im Oimrim Lidrosh Lefanav L'Shemer Sachar, V'lo Lifnei Fanav V'lo L'Shemer Chinam, O Afil Lifnei Fanav V'Rabus HaShemer Chinam. Beautifully written. Okay. Alright, let's continue then. So, Tznan. Hashoyel Hapara. So we saw in our Mishnah, beginning of this parak, that if you borrow a cow, and you also have the owner of that cow work for you as well. You borrow his services to work. Hashoyel hapara, you borrow a cow. You have him work. Not that he's working for free, you're paying him. Let's say you either rent it out or borrow the owner's work. And only afterwards, you borrow the cow. Now, what is the reason? Is because, let's see the last case, is because at the time that you borrowed the animal, you had already also had the owner. So in order for, we say Baal Imoy, it's totally, as we're going to see, not so much on when the animal gets injured, but rather at the time of the actual borrowing of the cow, you already had to have Baal Imoy at that time. Now, V'ilu Shemachinam Lokatani, we don't mention anything about Shemachinam to say that when it comes to a Baal's potter, so it says Rashi, B'shilu potter bo b'Baalam. L'chayra, if we're dealing with Pshia, it shouldn't work because the Mishnah doesn't mention anything about a Shemer Chinam. So when it says, what are you talking about? Tamech Shemer Sachar Mikatani? Now, L'divri HaKoyel, it does apply to a Shemer Sachar. It doesn't mention a Shemer Sachar either. It talks about a Shoyel. It talks about borrowing. So our Mishnah doesn't talk about the case of a Shomer. Elatana Milsa, as we continue to study him with base, why does our Mishnah not mention Shemer Sachar? Or possibly Shemer Chinam, because it only mentions the Ksiva Behedya Katani, the Asim Drasha Lokatani. It's only going to mention things that are explicit, which is the Shoyel, as opposed to the Shemer Sachar. It's only through the Drasha that we learned out that it also includes the Shemer Sachar, or possibly Shemer Chinam too. So it's not a raya. Tashma. Shalva v'shalbela ima. So here we have the next piece. It says you borrow it, and then you borrow the person with it, with the animal. Sachara v'sachar bala ima, you rent it, and you rent the person with it. Sha'ala v'sachar bala ima, you rented the person, you borrowed it, and then you rented the person. Sachra, you rented it. The shal baleha ima. Alpha pi shabalam oisim malacha b'makam acher even though the worker is doing malacha, umesa, and the animal dies, for example, pater. Now, savura hamani Rabbi Hudahi, dami, that he considers, according to the Shita of Rabbi Huda, that a renter has the same halachic status as a shomer sacher, again, for example, being chayav in gnei v'aveda. Now, haitana katani milsa diasa midrasha. Now, this Tana is mentioning a case of something which is learned from a medrash, from a drasha, namely a shomer sacher, v'ilu shomer chinam al katani. But it doesn't mention the case of a shomer chinam. So, l'chayra, that's not a good answer, like we said before, because apparently they do learn out the dinim of a shomer sacher, but deliberately skips about a shomer chinam must be because when it comes to a shomer chinam who's poisheya, even babal imosh is still going to be chayev. Now, hamani ramer he the omer soicher kashomer chinam dami, that a soicher has the same status as a shomer chinam. Okay, the tana shomer chinam who adin lo shomer sacher. So really, it doesn't mention the case of shomer sacher, but it's the case of shomer chinam, and therefore, if the din is by shomer chinams, then obviously it'll be also bal imo, you'll be potter by shomer sacher. Imo is ema. Alternatively, Kidamachlif Rabba Baravua. It's as he flipped. Batani, and he learned like this. Seicher Ketzim Mashalim. What exactly is the din of the renter being obligated to pay? So we see that the shittas were flipped. The truth is, a borrower is going to be chayiv. The owner and the animal have to be doing the same work together, the same activity, to qualify for Baal Imo, for the person to be potter. Or let's say he's he's dealing with the donkey itself. And second of all, he has to be there not only at the time of the rental or the borrowing, but also when the actual accident took place. So al-mak savar balav imo kul milsa mashma. It has to be on the entire time in order to be potter, otherwise you'll be chayiv. So we're going to end up saying that those, on both accounts, that's not true. Meisiv Rabba, sha'ol v'shal balahi ima, if it says like this, sha'ol v'shal balahi ima, sachar v'sachar balahi ima, sachar v'shal balahi ima, sha'ol v'sachar balahi ima. So listen to the next line. It says beferish. Even if the person who owns this animal is not doing malacha in that same location, umeis, and the animal dies potter, we still see that the din of Baal Imoy still applies to potter you, even if the guy's not there, not doing work with the animal at that time. So my lab malacha cheres, no lo ba'ois malacha. It means that work. What does that mean? Somewhere else. It's the marapi ve'ozel kama. It means that he's in front of the animal. V'hamad seifa al gabahavi. If the seifa he's on top of the animal, must be reisha b'malacha cheres. It must be that, no. When it says makam acher, it means he's totally away. Dekatani seifa. Shal v'yachar shal baleha sachar v'yachar sachar baleh ima avu b'shabalam charshin al gabo v'meisa chayiv. It says that in this case, you're going to be chayiv, even if you're mamash working with the animal, because at the time that you borrow the animal, only later did you seek the services of the owner. So it has to be the Baal Imo at the time of the borrowing. So the point is that if the Seifa tells you clearly that even in this case, where maybe we're talking about where he's on the animal, must be the ratios where he's not on the animal. Now we know ratio of Seifa boys of alacha. The ratio of Busa Kamashwan. The Seifa of Busa Kamashwan. No, it's not a shiloh, not a way to ask this is a problem, because the ratio and the Seifa really have their own chidushim. And both of them, the person is there doing work with the animal. Ratio of Busa Kamashwan, the Afghan, the love al gaba, even if he's not on the animal, elba ois malach, he's with the animal working with it. As long as that, again, he was there at the time of the borrowing of the animal, then he's potter. Even though he's mamash on the animal itself. So, hi mai. If you want to tell me correctly, that again, this guy is not even anywhere around, and nonetheless you can be still potter from Bal Imoy, that actually is a huge chiddush. If you're saying that in the Reisha, the guy who's actually there, my Rabusa, what exactly is the chiddush? In both cases, he's still doing malacha with the animal. Like, why would you have a havamina that you're pulling an animal is not as good as actually riding the animal? If you're mamish doing malacha with the animal, that's obvious that would be that's what it means. So it must be when it says makam acher, it's actually talking about that you're not doing it. You're not working with the animal, and nonetheless you're still going to kick in the din of bal imoy. But furthermore, Tanya Mamashmash Nemri Bal Imoy, the fact that it says that lo yishalim, you don't have to pay, so why does the pasuk say, as we're going to see, so it says if the Baal is there, the Baal is not there. So if the Baal is there, you don't have to pay. If the Baal isn't there, then you do have to pay. So obviously, one of those psukim is redundant because you can infer the one from the other. If one pasuk just says, if the Baal is there, you're potter, we can understand by our own, without a second pasuk, that in the event that the Baal is not there, then of course you're going to be chayav. So, if just as long as he was there at the time of the borrowing of the animal, ain't sarich he doesn't have to be there at the time of the accident. However, let's say he was there b'shas shvura mesa, that's not enough. So it depends on the time of the borrowing, not necessarily when shvura mesa. So therefore, again, it kind of bavorns, or it shlugs up, I should say, the his svara. But Tani Idoch, and we also learned the mashmash number bal v'in ein imoy shom yishalom. Again, in the pasuk already says, if the Baal is there, you don't have to pay. So Enodeh is an obvious Shim Baal of Imo lo yishalom, that the Baal is there, you do pay. El Matamudor mean Baal of Imo lo mucha. Kivan shiatzim rishus mashal sha'achas bebal v'mesa potter. As soon as it's gone one moment from his hands, then you're going to be potter. Tiyofta the Rav Hamnuna tiyofta. Okay. So again, this was a clear refutation. Says Rashi, "Bertuvayu milse b'maydi oimer oisim alacha b'inon." He had to be at that place, and also afabi shabalom oisim b'makam acher. Okay. Abaya sevelok Rabbi Yeshaya. So Abaya holds like Rabbi Yeshaya, says Rashi. Demer be'inyan chiluk v'yafgav delok siv yachtav kamandak siv dami. So if we remember, again, when it comes to cursing your father and mother, so over there, the question is it both or either one? So the fact that it says, oh, do you actually need to say it's lachalek? Or do we always assume that it's considered to be together? For example, it says shor v'chamor yachtav. So when the pasuk says shor v'chamor yachtav, they're together, which is mashma that otherwise you would think that they're of course separated, so you don't need a drasha. That's the whole point of Rabbi Shaya, that it's as though it's written there anyway. Okay. So Bais Rabbi Shaya, the Mataritz L'Kroi Rabbi Shaya, Rabbi Savel Rabbi Yonasan, the Mataritz L'Kroi Rabbi Yonasan. So what is this? Bais Savel Rabbi Yeshaya, Mataritz L'Kroi. He can answer the Psukim Rabbi Yeshaya. So he said, if the man is there, then you don't. If he's not there, rather, then you have to pay. No taima delays vayu. It's mashma. It's only because he wasn't there at the time when it was borrowed and when it died. Ha'isa b'chada delays b'chada potter. Maybe that's mashma as long as he's at one of the other. Either he was there at the time when it died, or in the time it was borrowed, be potter, which again is not what we hold, but that's what it may be mashma. V'haksiv im bal imoy lo yishalim. It says that if the bal is there, you don't pay. Time of the isa b'tavayu. Maybe that's only when it's both. Ha'ise b'chada v'leisa b'chada m'chayev. If it's only at one, you're chayev. So this is the kasha. The two psukim, you can maybe think one is you're only potter when he's by both, or maybe you're only chayiv when he's not by both. So we said this is the teretz that if he was there at the time of the sheila, he doesn't have to be there at the time of shvur mesa. But if he was at the time of shvur mesa, that's not enough. He's still it's not constitutes bal imoy, and you'll still be chayiv because you weren't there b'shas sheila. Sadi Bava with Aleph. Rabbi Sabala Krab Yonasan. Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yonasan, but Tar says Kroi Krab Yonasan Desanya. Im Baal of Imoy lo yishalim. It says if the Baal is with you, then you don't have to pay. You're going to be potter. Now Mashma di Isa b'tervayu. Umashanami dechi Isa b'chada v'leisa b'chada potter. You could infer, when is it that the Baal is with you, you don't have to pay? It could be he has to be by you by both. It also could be mashma, he's at one of them but not at the other. You'd be potter. In other words, lo yishalim could be as long as he's there either at the time of shvur mesa or at the time of the borrowing. Uksiv bal of ein imo shal mishalim. Yet on the other hand, the pasuk says if the bal is not there, you have to pay. Now mashma deleisa b'tavai. Maybe it's only when there's no one around. He wasn't around for either. That even if he's only at one, but not at both, you would be chayiv. So it seems contradictory. So if you, just as long as he was there b'shas sheila, as you said, in tzarchu yosim b'shas shvur mesa. So there's no issue or no question. Now, when it comes to both opinions, the din is the same. And that is, the important aspect of being potter and calling the din a bal imoy is provided that he's there at the time of the borrowing of the animal. Whether he was there at the time of shvur mesa does not matter. So in this, the Gemara asks, Epochana, says Rashi, Loimer shebishas shmira potarto v'lo b'shas she'ela. Maybe the more important time really should be that the Baal needs to be there when the accident happens, which, by the way, most people probably just hear the din of Baal Imoy. You think that's talking about the time of the accident. But it's clearly that's not what we're saying. But why not? Why don't we say that? So, Mastabra, it's logical she'ela difa, that it's more important that the owner was there at the time when the animal was borrowed. Mishum dekam ma'isla l'reshusa, because it is basically being transferred from his reshus to this other person's reshus. Adarabba, shvur mesa di for shechein chay ba'insin. I don't understand. By shvur mesa, it should be worse. It's more important that he was there because you're chayim and oinsim. Since Rashi al oisa sham is chayivhu. That this is the time that the incidents took place. And a shimer is chayiv ba'insin. So ilu she'ela shvur mesa mayavid. So if it wasn't borrowed, then what is the difference? It was shvur mesa. The ilav shvur mesa she'ela mayavid. Right? In other words, basically saying like the whole issue is the actual incident of the animal dying, shvur mesa. So therefore, that luchar should be the most important time that we should apply the din of Baal Imoy. So he says that it doesn't make any difference. She'ela is still the most important time because not only is it being transferred from one shus to the next, also this is when the person is borrowing the animal, he now is obligated in his mezainis. So therefore, because of that transfer of responsibility, therefore the din is that that's the time that the Baal has to be there, to be potter. Rav Ashi Omer, he says alternatively that Omer Kram, but the pasuk says v'chiyishal ish me'im re'ehu. It says when you borrow it. It says it at the time of the borrowing. V'lo re'ehu imoy, he's not with you at that time. Shal mishalim hare'u imoy potter, which is mashmi was there potter. The yachi bal of ein imoy. When it says the Baal is not with you, the Baal of imo lomali. So as to say that ilav hanach havamina hayurchadikrahu. Otherwise, you would think this is just the normal way of the psukim. So it's interesting that you can just look at the actual language of the pasuk. The language of the pasuk is clear that the whole din of if ish me'im re'ehu that he's with you is v'chiyishal. It's at the time of the borrowing, and therefore that's the critical part to say that Bal Imo, you'll be potter, not at the time of Shvura Umesa Adkan.